In the fall of 1983, Sioux City, Iowa, was cloaked in unease when 18-year-old Terry McCauley vanished. A proud member of the Omaha tribe of Nebraska and a young mother of two, Terry was last seen in the early morning hours of the 26th of September, getting into a white Chevrolet Nova in a parking lot. Before entering the car, she told her two friends she was going on a date. The white male driving the Nova headed north on Omaha Street and then west on West 8th Street. Her family began to worry immediately. On the 1st of October, Terry's mother contacted the Sioux City Police Department and filed an attempt to locate report. With no success, she filed an official missing persons report on the 5th of October. Less than 24 hours later, Terry's body was discovered near 33rd and Pavonia Street off Floyd Boulevard by a resident walking his dog. She lay along an unkempt dirt road, mostly naked, and had been shot point-blank with a 20-gauge shotgun blast to the face. Her shirt and shoes were found near her body. Investigators collected evidence for DNA analysis, but due to very hot temperatures and decomposition, they were not able to find much usable evidence. Terry's friends were interviewed and cleared, and the case seemed to hit an end until 3 months later. While investigating a case where a man had fired a shotgun into a former girlfriend's house, police connected a white Chevy Nova, a 20-gauge shotgun, and other evidence to establish a suspect in Terry's case. Though circumstantial evidence seemed to point to the Nova's driver, an exhaustive search of the vehicle produced no proof Terry had ever been in it. Then the case went cold. Back in the early 80s, forensic science lacked the bite it has today. DNA testing was still in its infancy, and digital surveillance was non-existent. Investigators interviewed people, followed tips, and examined what evidence they had, but nothing stuck. No arrest, no confession, no justice. As the years went by, life moved on for most people. But for Terry's family, especially her mother, her siblings, and later her nephew, life moved differently. Holidays passed with an empty chair. Each birthday was a reminder. Each headline about another Indigenous woman gone missing rekindled their personal grief. The pain was doubled by a grim reality. Terry's case wasn't unique. Across North America, the crisis of missing and murdered Indigenous women and relatives, MMIWR, is more than a statistic. It's a wound. Indigenous women are far more likely to be victims of violence, and their cases are far more likely to go unsolved. In the decades after Terry's murder, countless other families would find themselves echoing the McCauley's grief, begging to be heard, to be taken seriously, to not be forgotten. Terry's name became a rallying cry for advocacy organizations like the Great Plains Action Society and Women Now, which helped keep her story alive when it seemed the world wanted to forget. They marched. They held vigils. They said her name. And then, in January 2025, the silence broke. After more than 40 years, on the 11th of January, 2025, officers with the Longview, Washington Police Department arrested the suspect, Thomas Dwayne Popp, in Cowlitz County, Washington. A grand jury in Woodbury County, Iowa, indicted Popp on one count of first-degree murder. He was initially held in Washington on a $750,000 bond before being extradited to Iowa, where his bond was increased to $3 million. Popp pleaded not guilty to the charges. The court has set his jury trial for June. For the McCauleys, the news brought a complicated flood of emotions. Relief, yes, but also pain, because justice, even when it comes late, cannot restore what has been lost. Joshua Taylor, Terry's nephew, expressed the surreal nature of the moment. None of it felt real, even up until this morning. It felt like fog. He and others had spent their entire lives haunted by the unsolved mystery, their grief compounded by uncertainty. The family thanked law enforcement for the time they put into the case and commended Woodbury County's attorney. Tricia Rivers with the Great Plains Action Society said, "James Loomis has done an excellent job. He gave us his word. He followed through, and we are just more than grateful for that, because in many cases like this, that is not what we see, especially coming from the Native community." Terry's story is still a haunting one. She was a girl with promise and fire, She loved to dance, to laugh, to be with her family. Her absence shaped those she left behind, pushing some into activism, others into quiet remembrance. Her name now sits among the too long list of Indigenous women taken too soon. But her case, at last, offers a glimmer of hope that such wrongs can eventually be made right, or at least acknowledged. Thomas Popp will stand trial. The legal process will unfold slowly. As these things do, evidence will be presented. Witnesses may be called. And Terry's family will have to relive her loss in the sterile confines of a courtroom. But something important has already happened. Terry McCauley has been heard. She is no longer just a footnote in unsolved murder files. She is no longer just another Indigenous girl. She is a daughter of the Omaha tribe, a symbol of long overdue justice, and a reminder that time does not erase the truth, it only delays. On a quiet street in Greenville County, South Carolina, just off Bowling Road Extension, the life of 21-year-old Jarrett Cory Johnson ended in gunfire. The date was the 5th of December, 2007. The wound he left behind, on his family, his friends, and a justice system trying to keep pace with time, would take nearly 2 decades to begin to heal. His murder was not just another tragedy in the headlines. It was a wound that never stopped aching for those who loved him. And for almost 18 years, Jarrett's killer walked free. This is the story of a young man lost too soon, a case that refused to be forgotten, and the long road it took to find his name in a headline again, not as a victim of a cold case, but as someone for whom justice finally arrived. Jarrett Cory Johnson was born into a family that loved hard. He was kind, funny, protective, and had that spark that made people feel seen. In a world that often rushed by, Jarrett paused for people. He noticed things, remembered birthdays, asked how you were and meant it. He wasn't perfect. He was 21, still figuring life out, still chasing dreams that weren't yet fully formed, but he was loved. And for the people who knew him, that was enough. He deserved more time. But time wasn't on his side. That December night in 2007, a dispute broke out. What started as a confrontation ended in a flash of violence. When the police arrived at Bowling Road Extension, they found Jarrett shot. The crime scene was quiet, the answers even quieter. No immediate arrests were made. No closure was given. Just a broken family and a sealed body bag. Weeks turned into months. Months into years. The trail went cold. There were whispers in the community. Suspicions passed from neighbor to neighbor, but no one came forward with enough. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was loyalty. Or maybe, like many cases, Jarrett's murder had simply become a statistic on a shelf, a file marked unsolved, gathering dust. For his family, that label was unbearable. His mother never stopped asking questions. His siblings carried the ache of an absence they couldn't fill. There were no court dates, no justice, no explanations, just an empty chair at birthdays, holidays, graduations. "I thought someone would care enough to speak," one relative reportedly said years later. "I thought the truth would weigh heavier on someone's conscience than silence did." What changed? In recent years, the Greenville County Sheriff's Office made a renewed push to revisit unsolved cases. Jarrett's was one of them. The Cold Case Unit dug back into the evidence, reviewing old statements, re-examining ballistic data, and following up on leads that had once gone nowhere. Time may erase memories, but it also advances technology. Investigators were now working with tools they hadn't had in 2007. More importantly, they had something else: determination. And then the breakthrough came. In January 2025, nearly 18 years after the killing, deputies arrested Russell Allen Vance Sr., 55 years old. He was charged with murder and possession of a weapon during a violent crime in connection with Jarrett's death. Authorities said a long-standing dispute may have been at the center of the conflict that led to Jarrett's shooting. Vance was booked into the Greenville County Detention Center without bond. No press conference could undo what had been taken, but it was something. After all these years, Jarrett's name wasn't in a forgotten file. It was on an arrest warrant. The arrest didn't bring Jarrett back, But it gave his family something they had long been denied: a measure of justice. After 6,200 days of silence, someone was finally being held accountable. For Jarrett's mother, the news of the arrest likely came with a swirl of emotion, relief, rage, sadness, maybe even peace. But peace doesn't mean absence of pain. It just means finally having a place to put it. The family has remained private since the arrest. But if history is any guide, they'll continue to carry his memory with strength and grace, the same way they've done for nearly 2 decades. Despite the arrest, the case remains active. Investigators are still encouraging anyone with information, no matter how small, to come forward. That's the thing about justice. It's never too late, but it's also never complete if the whole truth isn't told. Jarrett Cory Johnson should have had a chance to live out his life, fall in love, chase dreams, make mistakes, grow old. But he didn't. And for 17 years, the system struggled to say why. But now it can say something else: that his life mattered enough to fight for, that even after 17 years, someone still cared, that persistence works, that cold cases don't have to stay cold forever. Justice moves slow, but sometimes it does move. And Jarrett, he finally got his headline back.
In the early days of March 1998, the city of Toronto was shaken by the grim discovery of a young woman's body in a nondescript parking lot behind 130 Carlton Street. On the 8th of March, officers from the Toronto Police Service 51st Division responded to a call at the rear parking lot of this location, where they found the victim, later identified as 24-year-old Donna Agliff. Originally from the Philippines and a resident of British Columbia, Donna had only been in Toronto for about 5 weeks. She was 4 months pregnant with a boy and had another child. At the time, Donna was working as a sex worker, a fact that framed much of the investigation. The cause of Donna's death was determined to be strangulation, a violent end that stunned the community and left many questions unanswered. Early in the investigation, forensic experts developed a male DNA profile from evidence recovered at the scene, giving police a vital lead. However, despite this promising breakthrough, no match was found in the police databases, and the investigation quickly stalled. Detective Sergeant Steve Smith noted that it appeared to be a lady-of-the-night transaction that tragically ended in Donna's demise. He added that while the suspect was believed to be a client that night, it remained unclear whether this was a single encounter or part of a pattern. The Toronto Police Service and the Missing Persons Unit's cold case section kept the case open and actively investigated it over the years, but sadly, the case eventually went cold. More than 2 decades later, renewed public interest briefly stirred the investigation. In December 2019, a YouTube video appealing for information about Donna's murder was released. Later, in October 2021, the case was featured in a Toronto police podcast that highlighted unsolved homicides, keeping the hope alive that one day justice might be served. The turning point came in 2022, when the Toronto Police Service submitted forensic evidence to Othram, a forensic laboratory based in the Woodlands, Texas. Othram specializes in investigative genetic genealogy, a cutting-edge technique that uses forensic-grade genome sequencing combined with genealogical research to identify suspects by tracing family trees, even when their DNA is not in criminal databases. Using this technology, Othram scientists were able to create a comprehensive DNA profile of the suspect. This profile was then shared with the Toronto Police Service to conduct a forensic genetic genealogy search, which resulted in new investigative leads. These leads pointed to a suspect living in Newfoundland, bringing fresh hope to a case that had remained unsolved for over 24 years. On the 6th of February, 2025 50-year-old Ronald Gordon Ackerman of Gander, Newfoundland, was arrested at Toronto Pearson International Airport after arriving on a flight from Edmonton. At the time of the murder, Ackerman had been living in Scarborough, Toronto, and working as a truck driver. More recently, he had been employed in the oil fields near Fort McMurray and was returning to his home in Newfoundland when apprehended. Although Ackerman's DNA was not previously in any police system, genetic genealogy traced the crime scene DNA through relatives to him. Law enforcement sources described Ackerman's reaction to his arrest as one of shock and disbelief. Detective Smith shared that although Ackerman was known to police for other matters, his name had never surfaced during the original investigation. The detectives believe that Donna's violent death resulted from a trick gone wrong, a client interaction that ended in tragedy. Detective Smith expressed the long-standing commitment of the investigators to seek justice for Donna and her family. He said, "For 26 years, investigators have remained committed to seeking justice for Donna and her loved ones." Advances in forensic technology, along with the unwavering dedication of our team and investigative partners, have led us to this arrest. Our thoughts remain with Donna's family and friends who have endured decades of grief and unanswered questions. No matter how much time passes, we do not give up on victims of slayings. This was a horrendous crime. She was vulnerable, working on the streets to make money. But we never forgot Donna. We never forget anyone. Donna's story is not just one of a crime solved, but a deeply human tragedy. A young woman, pregnant and far from home, struggling to survive in difficult circumstances, whose life was violently taken. Her death left a void for those who loved her and underscored the dangers faced by sex workers, who often live on the margins and are vulnerable to violence. The resolution of her case, though late, honors her memory by affirming that her life and death mattered, and that even after decades, the truth can emerge. The use of investigative genetic genealogy illustrates the incredible advances in forensic science that are transforming cold case investigations worldwide, offering renewed hope to families waiting for justice. As Ronald Gordon Ackerman awaits trial on first-degree murder charges, Donna's family can finally begin to find some peace. The community also reflects on the progress made in forensic science and the relentless dedication of law enforcement in never giving up on victims. Anyone with information about Ronald Ackerman or this case is encouraged to contact the Toronto Police anonymously through Crime Stoppers. This case serves as a powerful reminder that no matter how much time passes, justice can still be served, and no victim is ever forgotten.
For years, the December air in Wilmington, Delaware, held a chill that had nothing to do with the weather, a silence that hung heavy over the neighborhood, where 67-year-old James Pinket lost his life. It was the closing days of 2019, and the city was preparing to ring in a new year. But for Pinket's family, time stopped on the 1300 block of East 29th Street, where he was fatally gunned down in a burst of senseless violence. What made it all the more tragic? He died shielding children from gunfire. James Pinket wasn't just a bystander. He was a protector, someone who stepped into danger when others ran from it. That night, a barrage of bullets erupted, and as chaos unfolded, he made a selfless choice to get children out of harm's way. In doing so, he became a casualty of someone else's war. The shooting remained unsolved for over 5 years. The case grew cold, resting among the many others on the desks of Wilmington's cold case unit. But in the background, detectives pressed on, quietly piecing together evidence, building timelines, and following leads that once seemed to go nowhere. Then, in early 2025, the silence finally broke. Authorities announced that two 22-year-old men, Dion Young and Amir Dunn, had been arrested and charged in connection with Pinket's murder. Their names had surfaced in connection to other violent crimes committed around the same time in 2019. Young was already incarcerated at the Howard R. Young Correctional Institution on unrelated charges. Dunn, on the other hand, had managed to slip out of state. He was eventually tracked down in Houston, Texas, and extradited back to Delaware on the 23rd of January, 2025. Both suspects now face a long list of serious charges. Dion Young was hit with 34 charges, including 6 counts of first-degree attempted murder and 11 counts of possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony. His bail was set at a staggering $1.5 million cash only. Amir Dunn faces 19 charges, including 3 counts of first-degree attempted murder and 7 counts of firearm possession during a felony, with bail set at $866,000 cash only. Investigators also connected Young to 2 other shootings, one that injured a 20-year-old man on the 24th of December, 2019, and another on the 26th of December, where shots were fired but no one was hurt. The timeline of violence painted a grim picture, a trail of gunfire that seemed to culminate in Pinket's tragic death. The arrests brought a measure of relief to the Wilmington community and renewed attention to the unsung heroism of James Pinket. His actions that night reflected more than instinct, they reflected character. He could have run. Instead, he stood between danger and defenseless children. It was a decision that cost him his life, but may have saved others. Though arrests have been made, the case is far from over. Authorities continue to ask the public for help. Any information, no matter how small, could help ensure justice is fully served. The Wilmington Police Department's Cold Case Unit remains committed to seeing the case through. James Pinket's death is a reminder of how violence leaves lasting scars, not only on the victims and their families, but on the heart of a community. Yet it's also a story of courage. Even in his final moments, Pinket chose to protect. His name now lives on, not only in court filings and police reports, but in the memory of the children he shielded and the community he helped inspire.